Welcome back to Advanced Techniques in Corel Draw. I'm Mary Winkler for Tots Plus. In this lesson, we'll continue rendering our frosting with the help of other objects, fountain fills, blending modes, and various levels of transparency. Picking up where we left off from the last lesson, I've unhid some of my fountain-filled shapes from the original donut design. As you can see, we have a mix of shadow and highlight shapes that help define the frosting edges, curves, and more. We're going to create shapes similar to these in this lesson, with help from drawing and shaping tools. Let's start with a shadow shape. Draw a shape that overlaps a portion of the center of the frosting with the freehand tool. Make sure it's a closed curve. Notice how close to the inner edge of the frosting the shape was drawn and how it follows the contour of the frosting. Zooming out, I'm going to reference the blend we created earlier. I'll be using it quite a bit. Grab the darker color and set it as your new shape's fill color. Grab the transparency tool and use it like you would the interactive fill tool, dragging out the fountain fill within your shape and adjusting the transparency settings in the property bar. I've chosen to use an elliptical fountain fill for the transparency. In the shaping docker, intersect the two objects. I have both Leave Original Source Object and Leave Original Target Object selected, in case I want to reuse something I've drawn for intersecting later. You can deselect Leave Original Source Object if you'd rather speed up your process. Delete extraneous shapes. Let's explore an alternate transparent fountain fill method. Hit None in the property bar with the transparency tool selected and apply a fountain fill to the curve. Select the right color, make sure the color is the same as the left, and set its transparency to 100%, effectively rendering it transparent. Now you can use the interactive fill tool to adjust the fountain fill and change how this shadow shape interacts with the rest of the frosting. Let's repeat this technique for a shadow shape on the outer edge of the frosting. Once again, use the freehand tool to draw a shape that follows the contour of the lower left side of the frosting object. Intersect it with the original shape. Delete any extraneous shapes, and use the attribute eyedropper to copy the fountain fill from the first shadow shape onto this new one. For my next shape, I'm going to change my freehand tool's options. Double-click the toolbox, select Freehand Bezier tool, and set smoothing to 55. If you're not using a graphic tablet or a stylus, I suggest keeping the smoothing higher. I want more control over my shapes, however, especially smaller shapes. Draw a small, wiggly shape that once again follows the contour of the icing. Use the attributes eyedropper to copy the other shadow shape's fountain fill. This time, however, change the right color to light pink. This is one of our highlight shapes. Consider the shadow and highlight shapes to be the crests, high points, and troughs, low points of a wave. Wavy frosting shapes. Under transparency, set the blending mode to screen and transparency to 40 or so. Continue creating thin wiggly shapes drawn with the tool of your choice in order to create shadow and highlight shapes within the icing. I've sped up my process here, not only to speed up the video itself, but also drawing multiple shapes at once and changing their attributes in one go, either defining each shape as a highlight or shadow. How many shadow and highlight shapes you create is up to you. Remember that we will be creating an assortment of sprinkles in the next lesson, so you don't want to overwhelm the design with too many wavy shapes within the frosting object. Additionally, you want viewers to be able to see that the frosting has a sort of texture now that you've spent the time to render it further. Balance it as you see fit. Once satisfied with your design, select all of your shadow and highlight shapes in the Object Manager and group them together by hitting Ctrl-G. Keeping your Object Manager organized goes a long way into making it much easier to edit and add components later. Thank you so much for watching this lesson on creating shadow and highlight shapes in Corel Draw. In our next lesson, we'll finish up this chapter and create a custom artistic media brush in order to add sprinkles to our donut design.